I think we'll go ahead and get started with this workshop today. Good morning, all that are with us and those who will watch this video in the future. Um, we are doing the Sembrando Salud workshop series. Sembrando Salud is a program under the Center of Southwest Culture whose mission is to develop healthy indigenous and Mexicano, Chicano communities through economic development and cultural and educational programs. Today's workshop, which is workshop 2, will cover natural pest management. We'll go ahead and start with introductions of the team for today. I'm going to pass this on to Daisy first, then Tiana, and then I'll introduce myself after. So go ahead, Daisy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Daisy Cortez. I'm really happy to be here with you this morning, and I'm really excited to hopefully answer any questions you all have about natural pest control with our really awesome team. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Albuquerque. First generation. My father is from Morelos, Mexico, and so I come from a long tradition of growers. I myself have been involved in farming for about 10 years as a farmhand, a farmer, a farm educator. I also do some community herbalism and I do massage therapy for my community. So I'm really excited to be part of this program that really is about bringing health back into and also strengthening the health of our communities and our soil together. I'm going to be mostly on the chat. So if you don't feel like speaking up during the Q&A portion, feel free to leave questions in the chat. And I myself and Tiana can also help you with that. So I will pass it off to Tiana.
Good morning, everybody. My name is
Tiana, we're experiencing.
Fazo. I am from House Pueblo. Oh no. I know I'm in a cafe and I don't know where my internet is crazy.
Yeah, you're
So
kind of coming in and out of
oh
audio.
no. Let me try to turn off my video. Can you guys hear me a little better now? Perfect. Okay, yeah. Tiana Fazo from House Pueblo and Hemus Pueblo, but I currently live
We're losing you, Tiana.
in
Sorry.
House Pueblo. I think I managed a few greenhouses, so excited to be on this presentation.
Okay, a brief introduction on myself. I'm Bryce Townsend. I'm from the pueblos of San Felipe and Okeowinge. I'm the owner and operator of Black Mesa Farm, which is located in San Felipe Pueblo, and I grow a variety of specialty crops. That's where I've gained most of my experience on observing bugs, and that's going to be the center of the topic of discussion for today. So we'll go ahead and move on to the presentation. Oh, but before we get started, go ahead and give you some places that you can find us. We're on
YouTube.
YouTube. That's the icon for YouTube. So we're YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find more information about the Center of Southwest Culture on Google. This is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about some natural methods. Um, Before we get into it, though, we want to really iterate the notion that observation is the most important piece to farming overall, but especially for finding bugs that are in your farm, because everyone's gonna have a different set of bugs that they encounter. The time of day is gonna dictate what you run into, the types of plants that you have, the habitat that you're in, the region that you're in, the weather, of course. Those are all gonna be factors in what you're gonna come across in your farm or garden. We're gonna talk about some common pests. We're gonna talk about some beneficial insects, different habitats, some insect repellents for control, and physical methods to control the pets in your area. So some common pests. The hornworm is a insect that you'll come across, especially if you're growing tomato plants. They're really hard to find if you're not looking for them. They can hide very well. And so it takes really close inspection of your plants. Um, the way I've been able to find the horned worm in on my farm is through their droppings that they leave on the ground. So as you're walking through your field or farm or garden, if you're looking on the ground level, you'll see little black droppings of the hornworm, and that's probably the easiest way to find them, because if you're looking for them on the plant, they can blend right in, so it's makes it really difficult to just spot them by eye, unless you really have that experience in what you're looking for. Another common bug, especially if you're growing squash, cucumbers, pumpkins, you're gonna come across squash bugs. And these are one of the nastiest bugs that I think are out there. We have a couple images here. The little box on the right are the eggs of the squash bug. And so these are usually found underneath the leaves of your squash plant. They can also be found on the stem. Um, so that's the best way to keep control of the squash bug is to find these eggs and manually remove them. That's probably like the best type of management you're gonna be able to do to control these. Because once it gets out of hand, it's like you can probably kiss your plants goodbye. And then the boxed image on the left are when these eggs hatch. You're gonna have these little tiny critters, and you can see on that leaf there, it's already getting out of hand, and they'll start to move to the actual fruit of the plant, and then you'll find it underneath the fruit of the plant if you were to pick it up. But yeah, once it gets to that level, it's very hard to get control of that situation. Other places you can find squash bugs are underneath um wood pallets or scraps of wood. Like I found them in many different places, not only in the farm, but on the edges of the farm. So, and they can survive throughout the winter time, and I've come across them pretty much year round. So trying to keep your farm tidy is really important. At the same time, with the idea of them being found under panels of wood, that's another way that you could have some control is if you have a smaller garden, you could place say some boards next to your plants, and the bugs will actually tend to move underneath the board. So if you're able to kind of trap them there and smash them there, that's another method of some management. The next common pest,
Oh, Bryce, just to piggyback off of your off of the squash bugs, like Bryce was saying, they're super hard to manage once the population gets out of control. And I really agree with the like putting a board or something in your garden at night and then using that to squish the bugs. Also, yeah, like hand picking I found is the best. If you find that a lot of your leaves have like a ton of squash bugs on them, then you can resort to like even cutting off of that leaf and like squishing them on like that. But the thing with these bugs too is they stink. They're stinky little things. They squish them. So if you find yourself be getting a little too overwhelmed with the smell of these bugs when you squish them, I would suggest, and this is for the hornworm too, but having like a bath of soapy water with you while you're going through your garden. And you can either like take off the bugs, with a gloved hand if you prefer as well, and just throw them in the water or cut off the leaf itself and throw them in the soapy water. That should usually kill the bug right away. And then you can dispose of that water however you please. And you won't have to worry about that bug coming back. And like Bryce was saying too, these bugs love to overwinter under wood or kind of wherever you may have just like a pile of stuff. So if you find that you do have like a ton of squash bugs that year, I would highly suggest either like control composting them, like really making sure that you get these like plants in your compost and they really break down quickly. Or you could even burn your plants if you have a really big infestation. Um, and I would even suggest like crop rotation as well. So if you have a lot of bugs in your squash garden that year, like just be mindful of that. Be mindful that they might be in the soil. Be mindful of like cleaning that area of your garden to make sure like there's not any other plant debris on there. But just like yeah, rotate as you can, and that will help prevent them bringing them back so much. Yeah.
those are great points. And I'm going to add one more thing to the management piece is the eggs that you see on the right side of the screen. One way to remove them is to use duct tape. So if you just invert the duct tape, like say you take maybe 2 or 3 of your fingers and wrap them around with the inverted tape, you can actually just stick the tape underneath the leaf to or where the eggs are at, and you'll have minimal damage to your leaf if you use duct tape. That's I found that to be a really good method to use.
Yeah, I feel like duct tape will be a common theme as we go through a lot of these insects too. It's surprising how helpful duct tape becomes in battling a lot of these pests. And also intercropping like nasturtium is really helpful too.
That's great. I'm just gonna um acknowledge that we have a few more participants that joined a little later. To those of you, I just want to also let you know that this workshop is being recorded, and you can always refer to it in the near future to catch up. Aphids, this is another one that will wreak havoc on your greens if you're well, like a lot of plants that if you're not too careful. So I found them to infest crops when the crops are really dense, when they're densely situated. Um, Weed management is very critical to help keep any insect infestation down. So aphids are I found them underneath the leaves of spinach, definitely in your salad mixes. Not too much on kale, but they're definitely attack the greens. So one remedy for this, which we'll actually get to in a bit also is ladybugs. Ladybugs feed off of aphids. So once you see ladybugs, you know you're gonna have some control over aphids in your garden. And of course, everyone knows the dreaded grasshopper. Um, I've actually been pretty fortunate, knock on wood, that the grasshopper population has been under control on my farm in South Lakeview. But this particular image, um, as I was walking through my farm, I noticed, it was a huge grasshopper. I would say maybe at least 3 inches in length, and it was just sitting there. And usually when you walk by a grasshopper, it's gonna fly off, but this one just stayed in its spot. So I went over to it, and then I picked it up, and as I picked it up, there was this long, I don't know what you want to call that, this long tube of eggs that was stuck into the ground. So it didn't come out right away. It took some actual um, pressure to pull that out of the ground. But at that time, it was laying eggs. And if you can see at the very tip of that tube of the grasshopper, there's a couple little yellow eggs there that you can see. And so um, that was the first time I ever did that, so I was pretty surprised. And just the scale of that extension is probably another 4 inches just that was stuck into the ground. So if you do come across grasshoppers like that don't move, they're just staying still as you walk by, that's probably what they're doing there, is laying eggs into for that next generation. So one measure I've taken, because I did have an infestation of about maybe 5 years back, is I used Nolo bait, which is an organic remedy. I used it. Definitely the instructions are on how to use it, but you want to scatter that Nolo bait around the perimeter of your farms, um, and not directly on your plants or anything, but you want to put it in areas um where there's a lot of grasses, because grasshoppers like that type of habitat, or they like the long grasses to perch on. So Nolo bait was my cure for that.
Yeah, I found Nolo beet to be one of the better kind of deterrents against grasshoppers because, man, they can really decimate a crop. I also find like keeping grasses low around your growing areas is really helpful and like they're easier to spot out. So there's like, I find just like squishing them is the best way to get rid of them. I believe the soapy water solution may help as well. But some people like, I don't know if you guys have heard of Roxanne Swensel and her garden efforts, but she actually likes to capture these and save them. So she'll spray like cold water wherever she sees a bunch of them, because when they come into contact with cold water, then they're hardly able to move. So it's good also to like look out for them in the mornings or the evenings when the temperatures are cooler. They move a lot slower. And to capture them, she just has like a little jar with just like a little hole up top where you can like push them through and they can't get out. And so she she actually fries them. And oddly enough, they're really, really good to eat. But they could also be crushed and use other ways as well.
Yeah, this one on the screen looks really delicious, right?
Oh
Um,
God.
we did have a question on the chat. Oh, well, actually, you know what? We're gonna, I think, come up to a Q&A session, so we'll go ahead and address it if it is the next slide. If not, we'll come back to it. Oh yeah, okay. We'll come back to the grasshopper, but so we'll move on to the cutworms. Um, like if you disturb the ground a little bit around your plants, you'll usually run into a cutworm. I haven't really ever come across them like exposed. So like I'm saying, if you're disturb the ground, the soil around your plants, that's when I typically come across them.
Yeah, I found cutworms to be a little more active, like at nighttime or in the evenings, and they love cloudy days. So if you're like walking around your farm, and you happen to find like plants that are just kind of like cut like on the stem, then you have a cutworm. They love to overwinter too, so just be mindful of any kind of plant debris you have like around your gardens or even in your compost piles too. Um, and this is where I find the duct tape also comes in handy. You can put that at the base of your plants because they really love like, your little transplants, and that'll usually help capture them. If you can't use duct tape, even just like a cardboard or aluminum foil will work as
Nice. Flea beetles. This image is a little bit different from the flea beetles that I've come across. So like I'm saying, your habitat, your region that you're in, weather, it's all gonna dictate the type of insect that you'll come across, and can be different for everybody depending on that. And I'm sorry I don't have an image of it, but the damage that I've seen that flea beetles do, like to identify them, is they'll leave this like really perfect circle that's eaten out on your leaf. So if you see like little tiny circles that are eaten out of your leaf, that probably was done by a flea beetle. Um, and method for removal is just like you're probably gonna wanna, if you use any type of chemical or uh, yeah, I kind of hesitate on saying that because I don't like to spray or use any chemicals in my garden, so, or my farm. So but that one way to do is to spray them with like a soapy water um detergent, and that can reduce the number of flea beetles you come across.
well. I'm with
Um,
you, Bryce. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're good. Yeah, you feel free to chime in anytime, and so
Well,
what, and because in that Q&A session, we do want to hear about different experiences and what people come across, because it can be different for everyone too. So I'm sorry we'll have a couple more slides and we'll get to that Q&A session. Um, it's not an insect, but this is another pest that we come across in a lot of our fields and farms, and our gophers, right? So, and like I'm saying, I don't like to use chemicals, and a lot of people use like propane solutions, and they'll blow them up or whatever. But I just go with the trapping technique. So on the right hand side, you'll see um gopher that's trapped with that. So you actually got to dig down. So anytime you come across like a mound, if you're able to like clear out the dirt, um, to get to like surface level, and you can use some kind of stick or like a rebar to find the actual hole. Then you'll have to dig it out, and then there can be multiple passageways once you get into that into their hole. So I usually like to use like two of the traps, one going in one direction and another going in the other direction. Because you can't really tell which side of the hole they're in. But these types of traps you can get at Tractor Supply or one of your little feed stores usually. And I usually tie some type of rope or chain. In this case, I actually use some old drip tape to be able to locate the trap, because sometimes if you don't set your trap correctly, the gophers will just bury it into their hole, and you'll have no idea where that trap is usually. So you always want to leave a way to a method to find that trap once you put it under the ground. And ants are great. I don't know. Daisy and I were talking about how social they are, and everyone has a task to do, and they're always busy. But it was last year when I had planted some spinach, I noticed some ants like calling out all of my spinach seed. So like they can cause some damage if you're Not too careful or too careful? Not too careful, yeah. Okay, there we go. Q&A. So we'll go ahead and open this up to those of you that have joined us, and feel free to chime in either through chat, or if you want to ask your question through audio, feel free to do that too. But we do want to hear some of your experiences, maybe some of the techniques that you use to control pests, and go ahead and open it up to you.
Before anyone hops in, I did want to address the question in the chat from Beth about wanting to find Nolo bait, but not being able to find it. I guess there was actually a fire at the main factory, and so the supply has been really limited. So some alternative options are like diatomaceous earth could be another option that you can use. It's generally like safe for children and animals. But it cuts up like the exoskeletons of bugs, and that's how it kills them. So you might try diatomaceous earth, and I don't know if Tiana or Bryce has more insider info on if there's a secret Nolo bait supply, but that's what's happening is there is not a supply for anyone right now.
I would say if you know like a longtime farmer who maybe just has like a storage supply of stuff, guaranteed there's probably going to be some Nolo bait in there. But yeah, I think diatomaceous earth works as well. I would just say with that, be very mindful of where you put it and how you apply it, because it could also affect their beneficial insects.
And then another point on the Nolo bait is it does have a shelf life, and it has to be refrigerated. And it has to be applied at a time when you're not going to expect rain or that type of moisture, because it'll wash it out and render it ineffective. So if there aren't any other questions, we'll go ahead and continue on. I think now we're going to the good guys. So we got beneficial insects. Of course, bees are an excellent pollinator. And there's a huge, I'm actually going to be taking an introduction to beekeeping and pollinator class through Institute of American Indian Arts. So I'm a lifetime learner, so that's going to be my chance to learn more about bees, because I just know really general information about them. So I'm looking forward to that. So anytime you have a chance to take a class for pollinators, do that. At the same time, everybody has a phone in their hand, the palm of their hand, and there's Google. Just take an hour out of the day, an hour out of the week, and just do research on your own. And that's the best way to learn, is to take that in your control. So we brought up ladybugs when we're talking about aphids. That's one of their favorite sources of nutrition. But we do have some images of their eggs there, which you see on the top left. And then on the bottom left is the larvae of a ladybug. So if you come across that, it looks kind of creepy. It doesn't really resemble anything of a ladybug, but that's what it is in its growing stage. So these are just images to, when you're observing your garden, going through your plants, when you're doing your weeding, just look out for these guys. Lacewings, these are a beneficial bug. They do feast on other bugs, so and aphids can be one of those sources of their food. And these are just images to help you identify their eggs, their larvae, and what they may look like. So like sometimes you just see a bug and you're like, is it a good bug or a bad bug, right? So it's that's when I was first learning and growing these specialty crops. I would come across bugs and I didn't know whether to kill them or just let them be. So if you're able to identify them, that's going to be very helpful for your management of pests or insects. And we just wanted to add in a few more winged insects that you come across. There's a monarch butterfly, then another winged insect that I don't know what that is, and I took the image of it, but I didn't follow up by researching that further. But taking pictures of what you come across is a good way to you know have a library of what's in your garden, what's in your farm, and then you can always try to come back and read into it, right? Parasitic wasps. I do come across these quite often. They're not as plentiful, but you do see them in the gardens and the farms. Um, and this is just an image to help you identify that this is a beneficial insect. This one might be a little more rare, the assassin bug, but again, these images are there to help you identify what these eggs are, what their larva is, and what that actual insect grows to be. Spine soldier bug. These ones, they can kind of get mixed up with the Japanese beetle. But this one is actually a good guy, right? Got their eggs and larvae there as well. And then everyone knows that these earthworms are, one of the most beneficial plants for your soil, to build your soil. They create topsoil and what is that term? They break down. Uh,
Decompose.
they're decomposers, so they do. Their excrement is actually the beneficial part of that process there. And you'll usually find them when the soil starts to gain moisture, or maybe an area along your ditches, a ditch bank. That's where you're gonna usually find them. But once you might not see them if you don't have too much moisture content in your soil. But as you start to employ irrigation, then they'll start to surface. Not necessarily surface, but they'll come up to that layer of ground that's just in that root level. Other insects you might observe, these bugs, I just came across. The one on the right, I would just happen to be stepping out of my vehicle to open the gate, and as I was stepping, I saw this bug. I have no idea what it is. And the same thing with the one on the left, but I did manage to record it through photograph, and hopefully we'll be able to identify these in the next few days or weeks. But definitely create that library of bugs that you come across. The praying mantis there on your left. I've heard it could be good and bad. So I just let nature take its course in that case there. And then this little walking stick on the right. Sometimes you don't even see a lot of these insects if you're not paying attention. So that observation level is key. And the closer you get to your plants, so as far as usually I come across them when I'm doing weed maintenance, and that's um, you know, I'm not just weeding alone. I'm also paying attention to the surroundings of the plants, looking under the leaves, looking at the stems, and just paying close attention to what's in that vicinity. Now, those ones we kind of rushed through, but if there are any questions or people want to share some experiences and with bugs that they've come across, you can do that now.
Beth is in the chat and she's asking if neem oil is really helpful. I have found it to be helpful in a lot of cases. However, with like most insecticides or anything that you are going to use to battle pests, oh, cool, you're going to talk about it in the next section. Then, I can wait until then if that's preferred.
Yeah, I think we can address that now if it's the next section, right? Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I would just say for neem oil, just be mindful. I kind of use that as like a last resort if I find that my pests are just still being really persistent, because that could also affect their beneficial insects as well. So it's just really like what you observe in your garden, how many pests you have, and like if they're really, really bad. But I would say it's kind of like last resort kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel the same with any type of chemical, even if it's like a biodegradable soap, I'm still hesitant in using anything um like Tiana mentioned earlier, crop rotation is really good for just any type of pest control, pest management. And what like I try to let nature take its course. So the there's also gonna be other things that are gonna eat or or could cause damage to your plants. So, squirrels, we just gotta plant not just for yourself, you gotta plant for these bugs and these other critters that are gonna come into your growing space. And so, but it's up to everyone in their own whatever they think is best for them and how to um, manage your pests and insects and crops for that matter. Habitats to attract pollinators, beneficial insects, birds. So we have some calendula here, which can be a deterrent for a lot of bugs. That just the odors that these emit, they can be repellents. So I found them to be fairly useful. I can't really say exactly how much impact they've made, but um I haven't really had too many infestations of insects, but they're a nice plant to have. They're also medicinal. You can make teas and salves, and so um that's the marigold there. And just having different habitats. Most of this habitat is natural. It's near the ditch line, near some fruit trees. So we got some roses, echinacea, and just there's like a wildflower under that echinacea too. I'm not too sure of that plant, but so like okay, so one thing about these images is that it's pretty dense in there. So that could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, because now you're creating more space for like grasshoppers to hide. Um, you don't know what insects could be laying eggs in any of that area. So I do really try to keep weed control um or weeds to a minimum, just because you're creating those extra spaces where these insects can hide. So it's I guess there's always going to be a balance that you got to find for wherever you're growing and what you're trying to grow. Some bee space, right? We mentioned bees earlier briefly as far as being pollinators. Bees are I'm learning that bees are a great way to figure out what type of flora is in your environment. Does anyone want to add to what bees provide? No? Okay. Oh, here we go. So we are going to talk about neem oil a little bit more. Some homemade repellents and essential oils. So at this moment, I'm going to pass this on to Daisy.
Awesome. I also want to just add one more thing about habitat, which is we've talked a lot about creating habitat for beneficial insects. But one of our great allies in the garden can also be birds. They can come and eat grasshoppers and different bugs. And so if you can put out like little bird houses for your birds, or even like Bryce and I were talking, you know, they'll hang out at the top of a post or something. They just need safe, higher spaces out of the way of cats and stuff. But providing a little bit of water for birds, and also you can put water out for bees by putting out like a little container with rocks in it and shallow water. That way the bees don't drown in it. They're able to like access the water on the little rocks. Um, because yeah, more than anything in the garden, we're working with nature. And so the more that we can like create habitat for other creatures, they're gonna save us a lot of work. So I just wanted to add in the bee section, and then we can talk about neem oil now. So I really kind of echo what Bryce and Tiana have been saying. I think I come from a philosophy where I'm more interested in letting nature kind of do its thing. And I'm hesitant about adding even like natural chemicals to the garden because they do have an impact. However, I think it's really important to teach some of these options, especially as like an accessibility component. If for whatever reason it might be really hard for you to like get down on your knees or act like do the manual removal on your plants, this is also a viable option. And we just want to teach it with some caution. So we'll start with neem oil. This photograph shows the plant that neem oil is extracted from. And it's an essential oil. And so that means it's extremely concentrated. So with any essential oils, I would really recommend wearing gloves. If you get essential oils directly on your skin, even ones like lavender and things like that, it's really a lot of toxic load for your liver because it's so concentrated. Um, and also on that note, when you're using neem oil, you really want to dilute it. So you're never going to apply just like 100% neem oil to your plants. You're going to dilute it with a lot of water. And when you purchase neem oil, there should be clear directions about those dilutions. As Tiana was saying, neem oil is not going to specifically target only pests. It's going to also affect beneficial insects. So know that that is a potential impact of using it. Some other considerations when you're using neem oil is to not apply it on your plants in the heat of the day. When the sun is really bright, it can actually scorch the leaves of the plant. So you want to apply your neem oil in like the morning or like around sunset when the light is not going to be so stressful with that oil. The other thing I would really like to stress about neem oil, I believe Tiana said this also, but is to make sure you really wash your plants well, especially leafy greens and fruits, because you don't really want to be ingesting the neem oil. So if you have sprayed a plant with it, you're going to want to wash your produce really, really well before you consume it. So again, we wanted to teach neem oil because it is a safer alternative than chemical pesticides, but we still kind of think of it as like a last resort method. And on that note, we also wanted to give you a recipe that you can have at home for an insecticidal soap spray. And so what you would do is in a spray bottle, well, actually in a pot, you would take a gallon of warm water. You'd add 2.5 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And the oil is just the oil and the soap are gonna help everything like mix together better and not just separate from the water. So you'll add vegetable oil. You can add 2.5 tablespoons of liquid Castile soap. The brand I'm most familiar with is Dr. Bronner's. You can find that at a lot of grocery stores. And just you could either get a scented one if you want to skip the essential oil step in this recipe, but I would recommend unscented in general. And then you can add 3 to 5 drops. See, it's very little. Essential oil is really strong. 3 to 5 drops of essential oil because those smells are really strong deterrents for bugs. And yeah, you would add that all, mix it together really well, and add it to a spray bottle. And you could apply that if, like, say there's an aphid infestation or flea beetle infestation, you could apply that directly to the infestation. Again, you don't want to apply this in the middle of the day. That will really stress out and potentially scorch your plants. And the other thing I want to say is another way to introduce the smell of essential oils to your garden, as Bryce was saying, was to plant some of these really strong odorous plants. You can plant mint in the garden. You can plant lavender and lemon balm and marigolds, calendula. All of these plants will also provide that repellent quality. And then a recipe for animal deterrent spray. All of us know some of the animals we deal with. We talked about gophers, but a lot of us deal with squirrels. And if you live in a more rural area, you might also be working with deer around you. And we can do everything in our power to build fences and try to, physically protect our garden. And they are really resilient animals who like find a way to eat our garden food. Raccoons are another one I think of. So this recipe is an animal deterrent spray, and it's using the chemical capsaicin, which is what's present in Chile and makes it really hot. So it's quite similar to the other recipe. You would take a gallon of water, 2 teaspoons of liquid Castile soap, so a little less for this recipe, and then 3 to 5 tablespoons of really hot chile flakes. And you want to actually bring it up to heat on the stove a little bit just to kind of extract the chile like you're making a tea. Let that cool before you apply it to your garden. And with this spray, you do not apply it directly on your plants. That's super important. It can burn your plants. The idea is you're making a border, like an invisible border around your garden to deter these animals. The other safety thing I would say about this spray is we're from around New Mexico. I'm sure this has happened to you. You've been peeling chile or working with it, and then you touch your eyes or any other sensitive part of your skin. So if I'm working with chile, I like to wear gloves just to prevent that from happening. And yeah, and then there's also some physical methods you can think about in pest management. In this photo, you can see someone has these really cute little like insect nets. You can buy insect netting just like in a roll and kind of create your own structure for it. That's going to be less expensive than buying these like ready-made ones, and you can cater it more to your garden. So that can be an option. And again, manual removal is kind of like the bread and butter for us, I think. And manual removal, where you actually remove bugs and their eggs or larvae from your garden, is also the most intimate. So it's going to let you really see what's going on and build a relationship with these bugs. And you'll learn things about their patterns and how they hide and how they reproduce by doing that.
Stacey, if I may add to the insect nets that you showed, I think
Please.
those are also really good if you happen to purchase any beneficial bugs, like say the assassin bugs or ladybugs. And because I find like one time I had this like 100-foot greenhouse and ton of aphids, we got a ton of ladybugs, let the ladybugs go, and they just kind of like went all over and even outside of the greenhouse. And so if you have like a particular plant or a particular area that is really affected, I think these would be really helpful when you do purchase those beneficial bugs, because you can have like that controlled environment and you can let those beneficial bugs go within this net and they will really help with any of those pests. It just like really, yeah, helping with those problematic areas. But I also find that row cover is really helpful too. A lot of these pests tend to go for more tender plants. A lot of the transplants that we take out and put in our garden. And so the row cover will help with that, but just make sure that it's pretty sealed off. Um, and so you don't have anything like coming in from the edges of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tiana. I really appreciate that addition about it's like helping create a safe habitat for the bugs you do want. Yeah, and so that is pretty much the bulk of our material. So we'll go to our final Q&A, and I'll turn the screen back to Bryce.
And you're welcome to put your questions in chat if you like, or feel free to chime in.
If I can add, Bryce,
Yeah.
I really like that, observation was the number one thing to when it comes to pests and pest management, and even watching beneficial bugs in your garden. It's just good to see where you find that these pests are like going towards, and maybe even doing a little intercropping with that. So one example I'll give is in this greenhouse, we had a ton of aphids one year, and then the following year we did a little more like intercropping, and not just with like veggie plants, but also like other plants, like so alfalfa. I found that when we had like maybe one or two alfalfa plants in our greenhouse, that's where all of the aphids tended to go, because they're kind of looking for that sweet kind of plant. And so they just stayed on one plant and like left everything else alone. So it's good just to like be observant of that, be mindful of that, see what bugs go to where, and if you can have like maybe one or two plants like in a row or in an area of your garden that all of those pesky bugs can go towards. And yeah, it's kind of just like letting Mother Nature do its thing as well. And I will say too, like with the pollinator gardens, because it's a lot of those pollinator gardens will bring in your beneficial bugs. But what happens in the event when the beneficial bugs do their work, they manage like these pesky pests, you still want to keep them in your garden. And so that's where I feel the pollinator gardens are really helpful, even though they may be really dense. And you can have them scattered like in the area which you're growing too, because that will keep some of those pests there, and having like the flowers and all that that provide nectar and pollen for the beneficial bugs, that'll keep them there as well and just create a really nice little ecosystem for you. And I suggest in those pollinator beds planting not only like flowers, but carrots or parsley. Lavender is really helpful, mint, dill, and fennel, and lemon balm. Um, and then like for flowers, I would say it just depends. Like if you're trying to grow carrot seeds too, but like the soldier bug, they really like plants that have compounded blossoms, like Queen's Anne's lace or like yarrow. So yeah, just keep observing what's going on in your garden, see what bugs like which plants and what they don't, and you can kind of go from there.
Yeah, that's great. I'll add one more thing is as far as management and like a natural process. Well, management comes down to like weed control. I found that to be like the best way to manage bugs overall. Not it's not just cleaning out your plants, but if you're so what the weeds do when they're next to the plants that you do want is that they provide a little dwelling area for the bugs. So the bugs aren't gonna live or sleep on what they're gonna eat. So if there's a weed right next to it, that's where they're gonna dwell. Then they'll go feast on your food, on the produce that you're wanting. So just that little note as weed maintenance is essential for control, pest management and control. Does anyone have any questions? We'll ask again.
And if a question comes up for you later, our contact will be included in the last slide of this presentation. So please feel free to shoot us an email or a text message, and we'll do our best to get back to your questions then too. So this isn't your only opportunity.
So this was workshop 2 of the series. We have an upcoming workshop on the 29th, which will be next Saturday. And then every Saturday after that until the 12th. We do expect to put these workshops, the recordings up on our website soon. So also keep an eye out for that if you like to revisit this. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll end with our contact info. Yeah, and it's springtime. Everyone's, I'm sure, anxious to get out there and get going for the new season of growing and observation. And um, my recommendation is just do as much research on your own as possible, because nobody's gonna know everything, and it's up to you to seek that information. But definitely reach out to us if you do have questions, and we'll do our best to get an answer to you. And we are at the 12 p.m. mark, so that will conclude this session. We thank you all again for joining us today. You all also have a good rest of the day and enjoy the weekend. And I'm gonna throw this in there. Go Lobos. All right. All right.